So yes, we'll stand our ground. We won't be pushed around. We must keep you from putting our kids in the ground. So we can't stand down. No, we won't back down. We won't back down, baby. There ain't no easy way out. We can't stand down, brother. So we'll stand our ground. And no, we won't back down. 'Cause we know what's right. And we got plenty of fight. And if you think you're gonna keep pushing us around, well, you'll lose that crown. 'Cause we won't back down. We won't back down, baby. There ain't no easy way out. We can't back down, brother. We've got to stand our ground. And no, we won't back down. You know, it's pretty clear. If these lunatics think they have the right to strip us of our rights of self-defense, and if they're willing to do that, what else are they willing to do? We won't back down, baby. There ain't no easy way out. We can't back down, brother. No, we won't back down. Back down, baby. There ain't no easy way out. We can't back down, brother. We've got to stand our ground. So we won't back down. No, we won't back down. Virginians, you won't fight this fight alone.
Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday to you.
Yeah, happy Sunday, guys.
I hope y'all had a great Labor Day weekend, and I hope you didn't get hit too bad by storms the last few days. There's been some doozies rolling around.
Oh, yeah. There was a huge branch that came down and took out a little wooden walking bridge near me. I think it was massive.
Yeah, I dropped off some of the first batch of pocket knives to be engraved, and the engraver had several branches down in his yard. So anyway, welcome everybody. We're glad you could join us, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And also feel free to share this with your friends. Yeah, Philip does look different with the facial hair there. It took me a little bit of getting used to, but
Women change their hair, men can change their face.
That's it. That's it. Well, you can change your hair too.
I guess I could, but
Yep.
don't have a lot of choices.
Yep. So we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about tonight, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Boy, there's stuff going on everywhere.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we got somebody from Massachusetts. That's a state that's everybody's in battle, but they've really got their hands full up there too.
Yes. Yeah.
Dan Liberty's here with me in Chesterfield.
Yep. And it's as bad as we've had it lately in Virginia. There are states that have it a lot worse. So we're fighting hard to keep Virginia from becoming one of those states and to restore the rights that we've recently lost and even more. So, and to answer the question that we get asked almost daily, yes, we will be pushing again this year for constitutional carry in Virginia. I'm really sad that we weren't one of the first 25 states. There's 27 now?
Yep.
We should have been one of the first states to pass it, but it
Yeah,
will
at the
be passed.
time, the Republicans were the problem at the time we first
Mhm,
started this. But not all states, some have constitutional carry, but it's like constitutional carry concealed only. That's Florida, for example.
mhm,
And there are pros and cons to it. I know I've been kind of keeping an eye on the Florida situation, and there's just a lot of issues that you run into down there if you don't have the permit.
mhm.
A lot of restrictions on where you can carry, a lot more than you do if you got a permit.
Yeah.
But like I tell people, at least again, you take a situation where somebody's got, say, a spouse or an ex-spouse that's now threatening them. They're under an immediate threat. They buy a gun. They can now conceal it in Florida without having to wait for that permit to come in. Here, they have to open carry it.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the strong advantages of constitutional carry, the fact that you've got that immediate situation. I think we talked last time about this. The VCDL got a bill put in and signed, not signed, but we got it passed to the governor's desk and said if a person had a restraining order out against somebody, that the person requesting the restraining order, that order would be a concealed carry permit for 45 days.
Right.
And that was that which governor vetoed that? Was that
Was it McAwful?
I think it might have been McAwful.
Yeah,
I think it
I think
was.
it's been.
That's yeah. I think that was before the other awful.
Uh-huh.
Um, but the impression I'm getting though is if you're like here in Florida, you really need to have a permit to get all the sort of protections that
And there are
fall there.
places in Virginia where having a permit is advantageous. For instance, going to pick your kid up in school, you can
Right.
pull into the school circle without having to disarm and unload. And
The 182287.4.
yeah, if you have a
Yeah.
permit. There's also having a firearm with a magazine over 20 rounds or a threaded
Yep.
barrel, or it's in certain jurisdictions that if you have a permit, that law doesn't apply to you. So I say we should have constitutional carry and optional free permits because you should not have to pay to exercise a right. But
Right.
the permit puts the person through the background checks and things and gives some assurance that they are an upstanding, responsible person. So then they should be afforded these extra places. Of course, I don't think we should have bans anywhere. We should not have gun
Right.
free. But if you're going to have
Yeah.
sensitive areas, then that permit should allow you to carry in those certain sensitive areas.
Right. Yeah. And I kind of pictured that's the way it goes. Maybe over time one can get rid of that to where you don't really need a permit at all. But if you're practical about it, it's going to be a while to phase out. Some of the stuff we had to fight to even get covered by a permit, much less
Mhm.
without a permit. It's been a
Yep.
real battle for some of that stuff.
And this year we're going back to try to get more things taken off of the banned dangerous weapons list. So that's part of our agenda for this year. But I noticed a conversation going on in the chat here. Dan Liberty says that as Obama says, elections have consequences. And Seth Black is saying if Dominion doesn't count my vote, do elections still have consequences? And so I would say to all of you, get involved in the election process. You can become an election official. You can be an election watcher. Contact your local registrar's office and find out what you can do to ensure that the election is on the up and up and prevent election fraud.
Yeah, and support any prosecution of people that try to
Absolutely.
steal that vote. Boy, they need to go to jail for a long time.
Yeah.
To me that's a major crime. That's one of those that should put you in jail for a decade at least. if
And
not
Seth
more.
was saying too, and this ties into something you wanted to talk about tonight, that Maura Haley in Massachusetts wants to ban guns like they did in New Mexico.
Yeah, this is what happens when you get rid of insane asylums. You know, people like Maura Haley are running around with these crazy ideas. Yeah, that's on the list. We got a lot of things we're looking at talking about, and one of them is what's going on in New Mexico. So I was watching the press conference that the New Mexico governor had talking about this ban that she did. Oh, well, you know, but at least she's allowing you to have a gun going to and from a gun store or going to and from the range. And well, the gun has to be unloaded and locked separate from the ammo, even though you've got a permit, you got a perfect record, you never even have a traffic ticket. You still have to be treated like you're the criminal. I just kind of overheard on the news, Margaret had the television running, and I kind of overheard that there's some open carry protests going on right now in New Mexico. Basically, a come and get it kind of a situation. And I really would be shocked if I found the police wanted to be any part of any of this. This is clearly a violation of the Constitution. I mean, it's so far out there, it's unbelievable, including the ban on even permit holders being able to carry. And I guarantee permit holders weren't the ones that did any of the shootings that she's concerned about that are killing younger people. But it's so much easier to blame guns than it is to try to fix a societal problem.
And we do have a law here in Virginia that says that you cannot disarm people just because of a declared state of emergency. Um, Sadly, that was in effect in 2020 when they disarmed the people that went into Capitol Square for the VCDL um, rally on Lobby Day.
And the reason they
Um,
got away with it was it took too long for it. By the time we got to court
right.
to challenge it, it was over. So
It
then
was,
we
yeah,
lost our standing, and that was the end of it.
right.
So they got away with it because they could do it short term before we could legally have time to respond.
And the statute has no teeth. There's no stated penalty for violating that. So the worst that they can really do is say, no, you can't do that, and end the ban. But if it was a temporary ban and you don't get to court before then it's moot. So
Yeah,
but in a longer situation, then hopefully you would be able to get to court in a timely manner.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, I think we did try to get a faster restraining order, and a Richmond judge turned it down.
right. We tried to get an emergency stay and it didn't get heard in time.
Yeah, so then we had to go
Yep.
up from
So
there.
Sean Kennedy's asking, do we have the VCDL voting record from last session and have surveys been sent to the candidates? Yes, surveys have been sent to all the candidates. We had to wait for the State Board of Elections to publish the official candidate list. The first deadline for response is tomorrow. So, PAC endorsements should be coming out fairly soon. I know early voting starts on the 22nd. And the VCDL voting records from last year are online. Philip does a great job of putting that up there. And Philip, do you want to put the link in the chat there? Do you
For
have it
the
handy, or should I look
for
it
the
up?
voting records, I can
For the
get it real
voting
quick.
records, yeah.
Yeah, I can get it.
Yeah. So the voting records for um, several years are up on our website, and it's listed by name alphabetically and sorted by House and Senate. And it's also listed by rank, the top rank down. So
Okay,
pretty easy to search.
all right.
You should be able to just type in the comments and put the
Yeah,
link
I don't see
there.
where I can type in the comments. Let's
Okay,
see.
I'll put it up there then. Let
Yeah,
me
it's
find it.
just vcdl.org/page/voting-records.
Okay,
And
VCDL.
and that's got all of them from 2013 up. So all the way 2013 to 2023. So we have a decade's worth of voting records in there.
Just make sure I spelled it right. VCDL.org, voting records. Okay. All right. And Virginia Trail Camera Video says he likes the goatee. So
I
you're
just have
getting
to
a lot of
convince my
attention
wife.
with that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the white just stands out against my black shirt. If I wore a white shirt, I'd just be barely have a face floating in the picture.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
let me go back.
Yeah. Let me look at our list here, see
Okay,
what we
well,
got.
we're going to talk about Liberty safes,
Oh, yeah.
um, and yeah, that's there was a lot of information there, and a lot of people didn't realize it. I've seen people that have lost their combos and panic. How do I get in my safe now? Well, you really don't want to be left hanging where you got to have somebody come out with an acetylene torch and cut open your safe, or come out and drill out a lot of it and have to replace and fix it later. So a lot of these, probably most of the gun safe manufacturers, if you have a digital safe, they have a secret, unique factory code. So if you can contact them and prove that you're the owner, and I guess they require certain things to show that you're definitely, this is your safe, they can give you the second code that you can't change. It's built in from the factory to unlock your safe and get your valuables out of there. And then reset the safe to a new combination that hopefully you'll remember this time. Um, and so they have this. So some people weren't aware of it. A lot of us try to be careful and not lose the combination to our safe completely. We do try that. I know every now and then somebody that's got even the old mechanical type. Some people have it written down and they've actually left it in the safe when they close the safe, and they can't remember, and it's inside the safe, very secure. You know.
Well, if you
So
have more than one safe, you can put the combination to in the other safe.
yeah, put the combination for all the safes in each safe. That'll work.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
or have it in a safety deposit box at the bank. But then that means you're still locked out till you get to the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so,
Which is
but
better
anyhow,
than
that
being locked out all the way.
that does happen. So anyhow, so a lot of people, number one, were surprised, and I understand. They were thinking, this is my safe. I paid for it. I should be the only one on earth that knows how to get into it. And some people were surprised to find out that that's not the case. That there is a secret code that a lot of them have to get into the safe that only the manufacturer knows. Now, but let's be clear. If the police want to get into your safe, they'll get into your safe. They don't need the combination. Like I mentioned earlier, they can hire somebody to come out with an acetylene torch, and they'll just sit there and just cut that safe open. It'll melt right through that steel and cut it open, and then they can get in there and get out. Open the door and get in. So the difference is a safe is great, like when somebody's broken into your house and they're trying to steal stuff and they're under a time pressure. They don't know when you're going to get back. They don't know if you've got an alarm. So they're kind of rushing, trying to get into the safe, and the safe is giving them hopefully a very hard time in doing so. But when you're the police, you got forever. There's no rush. So you wait an hour and the guy shows up with an acetylene torch and you wait an hour for him to get into it. So what? C'est la vie. So let's not be fooled that what Liberty did would have made a difference in the end. It wouldn't have. But what they did wrong was to give that information to the police without a warrant for them to do so. It's none of their business that the police had a warrant for that gentleman's house. That's not the business of Liberty gun safes. Now, if the government had an order for a court order to Liberty to release that information, that's different. Then you can't blame the company, because if they don't, one of them is going to go to jail. And there's no reason for them to go to jail over this. Now, their solution, and I don't know if anybody else, any of these other manufacturers are looking at the same thing, was you can opt out and have your information removed from their database, so that even if the court gave them an order, they could just shrug their shoulders and say, sorry, we don't have that. And in which case, they'll also shrug at you if you lose the combination to your safe. So, there's pros and cons to that. And by the way, there's another way to kind of battle this. And that was in a video that I put up by a lawyer from Canada, of all places. And this guy's a gun lawyer up there, and he knows his stuff. But he pointed out quite correctly that the manufacturer has two things in the database: the serial number and the hidden code. That's it. So they search by serial number. If the serial number is not in there, or that you don't know the serial number of the safe, they can't find the code for you. So he suggested, rather than fooling around with other things, you can just obliterate the serial number anywhere on the outside of that safe. And then the police have nothing to go on to ask for to go to the manufacturer, even with a warrant, to get in there. But again, let's not be fooled. They can get in if they need to get in. So you'll slow them down, but you won't. You're not going to stop them.
So changing to a mechanical lock, yeah, I guess if you put your own mechanical lock on there, then you're the only one that has the combination. But even the mechanical locks, they do keep those combinations, from what I understand, not just the digital ones.
Yeah, they may have a backup for those as well. Yeah, I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised. Although there are ways to change the combo if they don't have a backup. If you bought the safe and it had a combo built in, apparently with some of these safes there is a way for you to change it, but it's a pain. And so some of these safes, apparently it just is a real pain. You got to get certain things lined up just exactly perfectly for it to work internally, the parts to change that combo. So anyhow, that was so Liberty has been under a lot of pressure. They're kind of getting the Bud Light treatment,
Yep.
and they've now felt the heat, a lot of heat, major heat. So now they've changed their policies to what I mentioned of you don't want us to have a copy of your combo. Contact us, we'll take you off like you never existed. Um, but it's a little late. They really should have been thinking of their customers sooner and not bowing to the government, merely asking, "Hey, would you mind giving me this guy's serial number or his the code?" The answer should have been, "Oh, hell no, you're not getting it." Now without a warrant, not doing it. That was a mistake they made, and they're
Yep.
paying for it.
Yeah, and I saw a story also. I have not verified it yet, so don't take me at my word for this, but there was a story out yesterday, I think, that their parent company had given about 400,000 in contributions to anti-gun politicians. So
Yeah,
there's
that's
that
on my
too.
list. That came out right after I sent the alert out, so I didn't have a chance to work that in. Yeah, and they're going to pay the price for that as well.
Right.
I mean, their thinking is, where are they located anyhow? Are they in Oklahoma, or where were they?
I don't know. Let me
Figure out where
see.
their headquarters are.
Headquarters is Utah.
Utah. Wow,
Hmm.
wow. So what's their reasoning for giving to an anti? I mean, I guess I was thinking if they were in New York and they felt somehow they could influence
Don't know.
somebody to kind of protect
Well,
their interests, but
they were
Utah.
bought out a few years ago. So, I mean, there's a lot of companies that were very rights oriented and were bought out by corporations at some point in time. And those corporations were um, less freedom oriented. I mean, look at take Bushmaster and Remington and all of those that were bought out and then ended up going by the wayside.
Yeah, Smith and
And
Wesson for a while. Remember that? when the
Mm-hmm.
British company controlled them, they were doing all kinds of stuff that was angering gun owners,
Mm-hmm.
including putting on some kind of a mandatory lock on the revolver, some kind of thing you had to have a key to. And then they got bought out by an American company, and then things improved
Right.
quite a bit from there.
Right. Yeah, but we see that all the time where companies sell. You can't run a company forever. We're all human. We age. We want to retire at some point in time, and so we sell the company. And a lot of times, you sell to the person with the money. And they're not necessarily aligned the same as you are. So things change over the years.
They sure do. Well, yeah. So we'll keep an eye on this, but certainly giving money to I mean, it's mind-boggling. Of course, they're not a gun manufacturer; they're a safe manufacturer. So who knows what they were thinking? Somebody here mentioned that he thought they were perhaps owned by liberals, is what he
Hmm.
stand liberty is saying. I don't know, but needless to say, their business is selling mostly to gun owners, not completely. Liberty safes. You could buy a Liberty safe in any of these safes and put no guns in it. You can put in money and coins and
Right.
papers and stuff like that. You don't, so they have more than just gun owners. But I bet you gun owners are the major part of who they sell to. I'd be shocked if that's not the case.
Yep.
Carl's just saying, hopefully, what's going on in New Mexico with the governor isn't starting to happen in other states. Who was that? We saw something. Didn't somebody earlier post that there was a state that was
Yep. Um,
that Massachusetts? Yeah, it was
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
believe it
yeah,
was. Uh,
yeah. Well, this, it's a mixed bag. When the gun controllers overstep dramatically, they go way too far. That actually makes our
mhm,
job easier in stopping what they're doing than if they just go a little too far.
mhm.
This was a major thing, and they're going to lose. In fact, she should be impeached, as far as I'm concerned. She should be impeached.
Yep. So apparently, Liberty Safe. They were on Keller. One of our executive members said that Liberty Safe was sold in 2021 to a new company. So,
A new
yep,
company, they just learned a very hard lesson,
they did.
and they're not done learning it yet. I'm quite sure.
No, gun owners have a long memory. Look what happened to Kmart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, good old, yeah, going. Yeah, what was her name? That was the one, the lady that Donald Trump hated. She hated him. The actress or comedian. Can't think of her name,
Um,
but they were.
Whoopi?
No, not
No,
Whoopi.
not
So
Whoopi.
uh,
Oh,
I'll think of her name in
yeah.
I'll think of her name in a minute, or somebody else will probably pop up with it. But yeah, they were big backers of the Million Mom March back in 2000, and what was it, 2001 or 2000? The Million Mom March.
Um, 2000, I think.
Yeah,
I should know that, having
yeah, I
been
was there.
heavily
I was
involved
there. I was
with,
on the. Yeah, I was there for the counter protest.
yeah, the
Uh,
Second Amendment Sisters was born out of that. So, yeah.
Rosie O'Donnell. Sean thought it was Rosie
Rosie,
O'Donnell.
yeah.
I was trying to
Hmm.
think of. Yeah, well, Kmart
Whoopi,
was all
Rosie,
behind her and
Rosie.
all the crap that she was for. And next thing you know, they disappeared.
Uh-huh.
And sadly, nobody cared. You know.
Yeah, so Husky Mom is saying, isn't New Mexico a constitutional carry state? And
Oh,
an
I
ex.
don't know about that. They had rather a checkered history with Kerry there for a while, um, but I can check.
No, it is not. They do not have
I would have been
constitutional
surprised.
carry. Yeah.
They're they're not quite there on guns completely. You would think they would be like Arizona right next door, but nah, they're not quite.
So we have Rosie O'Donnell and Roseanne Barr,
But Roseanne wouldn't have been. Yeah.
for the Kmart thing. Yeah.
Oh, well, Roseanne Barr would have been on our side of the fence.
No, I don't think so.
No, I thought.
No.
I don't remember hearing her
But
do anything.
sorry, doesn't matter. They're less than memorable, is what the point is there.
Yeah, true. All
So,
right. So another little goodie that came out recently was that the BATF wants to radically change the definition of a personal gun collection, and their new definition was really meant to be universal background checks, as close as they could get, and um, that's basically how it turns out if this was to be implemented. This is a proposal that they're wanting to implement by this time next year, and if all you have is guns that you hunt and target practice with, well, those are probably going to be considered more like personally owned and things that if you sold them wouldn't be as big a deal. But they don't cover self-defense guns at all. Nope. If it's not for sporting or hunting, then you sell one of those guns, and they could easily say, "Well, one gun's all it takes," and you could then be charged with dealing firearms without a permit, without a license. And they're leaving it very vague. And of course, that's what they would want to do. If they want to take your rights away, they need to leave it vague, so that you don't know what to do. There's no number. It's like, well, don't sell more than 5 guns in a year, and you're okay. Oh no, it could be one gun. You might be able to sell 10, but they're not telling you, and it could vary case by case. And since it's not spelled out, they could decide to prosecute you, and you're going to be going to court over selling one little gun. Um,
and
so
the famous trick of the ATF, I shouldn't call it a trick, but a big problem with the ATF is that you can contact them and ask a question and get an answer, and the next guy give you the totally opposite answer.
Just
Or
like the IRS.
the next agent arrests you for whatever you were told was the proper way to do something.
Oh,
So,
you listen to Jim? I'm going to arrest you because Jim doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah, I can,
and they a lot of times refuse to put it in writing when you ask them the question. They will give you a verbal answer and not a written answer. So, yeah, and you would think that having lost preliminary um, arguments in two cases where they just redefined things recently, that they would have backed off on this one, but no, they're going at it full bore.
yeah, and it leaves good people like us in a bind. You want to
Hmm.
sell a gun? Well, they want to drive you where you have to go to a dealer. It's
Hmm.
like, well, yeah, you can roll the dice. You can sell that one stupid gun, the only gun you've ever sold in your life, and find yourself facing a felony because somebody in the ATF didn't like you.
So we have to get that rule overturned that dealers now have to keep records forever and then turn them over to the ATF once they go out of business or sell their business and the purchaser of their business doesn't want to take over their books. So um, this has created the gun registry that was supposed to not be created by the dealers keeping these records as opposed to the ATF keeping
That
these
was the
records.
promise, wasn't it, Pat? That was the
It
promise.
was.
We're going to do this, but we're not a registry. This will not be
Right.
used in any way. So that was a promise made to the American people
It was.
back in '68, or when I guess it would have been '68, and
Hmm.
now they're reneging on it,
Absolutely.
and they
Absolutely.
desperately want. Again, it just proves our point. Why do they so desperately want to know who has guns? Well, we know the answer, and they deny it. But every time I turn around, they're proving again and again and again that they don't have a good reason for a nice reason, let's say, for wanting to know who owns guns. It's not beneficial
Yeah.
to the American people.
Well,
It's just
I'm
the opposite.
reminded of Ayn Rand's statement in Atlas Shrugged. If the statement that you're being told doesn't make sense, examine the premise. You know, if you ask them a question and the answer that they're giving you doesn't make sense, or the reason they're giving you doesn't make sense, examine that premise and see what's going on. So
Somebody's asking, Pat, what is involved with storing all those records? Secured
yeah,
storage rental?
so you can secure storage, and we're allowed to store off site with permission. But they're kind enough to allow us to have satellite locations where we store the records without having to get a separate license for that location. Um, but yeah, this could be massive amounts of data. But if you don't have the room to store the data, you can always just hand over your older records to the ATF and they'll keep them for you.
Oh, they're
So
so benevolent. I gotta love it.
yes,
Yeah.
they are. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dan
it's
Liberty's talking about, yeah, Matt Hoover and the key card. He asked for
mhm,
it if it was legal to sell. He was told
mhm.
yes by the ATF and is now a felon. Yeah, he's serving with 5 years or something in federal
10 he
prison.
got. Yeah, 10 he got. Did he get 10 or 20? He was just sentenced, and I don't remember.
Well, maybe it was more than five. Yeah, he got hit pretty hard. And a key card was just a flat piece of metal. It wasn't a machine gun. In theory, if you, the buyer, were to take the card and cut along the little metal outlines and stuff just the right way and bend things just right, it could be supposedly dropped into an AR-15 to make it fully automatic. However, my understanding is the ATF never actually succeeded in getting one of those to actually go fully auto with the car, but they went ahead and went after him anyhow.
Yeah, you're right, Philip. It was 5 years. I thought it was more than that. And the his co-defendant got a slightly shorter sentence.
Yeah. Really, and the co-defendant, wasn't he the one that produced the cards originally? I
Yeah,
think all that Matt Hoover did was advertise them and talk about them.
yeah.
And his life's
And oh, by the
destroyed.
way, the ATF never could get it to work as a
That's what I
machine
was going
gun.
to say. Yeah, never
Yeah.
did.
Hmm.
So how do they get a conviction like that? Just blows your mind.
Yeah.
But again, that's not an agency working for the people. That's an agency not worried about criminals, but worried
Well, and
about.
the bigger question is what's wrong with people having machine guns?
Oh, I agree. I agree fully. People can have machine guns right now. It's just that you have a limited pool you can buy from.
Right, you can't have a current manufacturer machine gun. So if it's
Yeah.
okay to have one that was manufactured and registered before the cutoff date, a transferable machine gun, why is it not okay to have one that was made now? And oh,
All
by the
right.
way, with CNC machines and 3D printing and all of that, how are you going to stop it? That
Right.
that cat is out of that bag and not ever going back in it.
Well, they keep the cat in the bag so they can go after good people with it. Again, they got all these bad guys running around with Glock switches. The Glock switch simply goes in and fiddles with the sear so that when you pull the trigger, it just keeps the sear does not stop does not recock and stop the action when the slide goes forward. It just sets up and fires again.
Right.
And yeah, they're going after people with those, but not like they would or they did with Matt Hoover.
So you've got people running around Chicago and stuff with Glock switches all over the place, and I don't see the big deal about putting them in jail for 5, 10 years, or murder. But you know,
Well, see,
um,
they're helping drive gun control, right? Because
yes,
these are the people that are the excuse. Oh, look at all these murders. We've got to have gun control. So in a
right,
way, the government's interest, if they want to disarm us, is to let these guys go commit murders and stuff. So the government can stand on a soapbox and say, hey, we got to do something about these guns.
yep.
Just
So
ignore that we're turning criminals loose. Yeah, that's no big deal. That's not the problem.
yeah, rights are not tradition says the text is plain. Infringement is in the dictionary. Second Amendment does not regulate arms. It prohibits any regulation of arms. It limits the government, not the people. And that's exactly right. And what the Second Amendment says is the government should not have any firepower that the people don't have. That's basically what it says. And if you think about it, when the Second Amendment was written, we had just come out of a war, winning our freedom from a tyrannical government across the ocean. And that war was fought with privately owned firearms. We didn't have a government to arm the army. It was all individually, privately owned firearms. And that's why they put the Second Amendment in there.
Yeah, well, the founding fathers knew that if the government was going to go tyrannical somewhere down the road, they didn't know how far down the road, but somewhere down the road, they were pretty sure it was going to happen. Because governments tend to do this, that they would definitely be coming after the armaments of the citizens. There's no doubt in the founding fathers' minds. That's why they enshrined it where they
Mm-hmm.
did, to give us as much advantage as possible to keep that from happening.
Well, the Brits
Um,
tried to disarm us in the first place
right.
to
But
keep us
when
from
your own,
revolting.
but when you're, well, and of course the argument could be, I was just going to say, but when your own government does it, but at the time that was
That
their
was
own
our
government.
government, yes.
That
Mm-hmm.
was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
We got divorced from them starting in 1776, but that
Yep.
was a good divorce too. Looking at what's happened in England. And
Yep.
that's sad. This is not the way. This is not the way it's supposed to be. And again, is it the local ATF guy that's the problem? Well, some of them are, but not all of them by any means. This is mostly the leadership that's dragging them that way. And if you want a paycheck, you kind of have to do what your boss tells you. Although I know there's some, just like there's some great agents, there's some bad ones too. So it's a mixed bag. And this should never have been this way. This is not the way it's supposed to be. But when leadership is bad, that's when you start running. That's when these kind of things can happen. Well, just a bad agent on his own couldn't do a whole lot of damage, but the leadership of something like the ATF could do an incredible amount of damage. Previous paper records were kept in Martinsburg, West Virginia, same
Yeah,
place,
they're
but
not supposed to digitally store those records, although I'm pretty sure that they do. And yes, the the ATF's record keeping is less than optimal. We had a conversation about that in our live broadcast last month, didn't we?
yeah, they lose
Yeah.
guns. They kind of
Yeah.
shrug. If we lose a
Hmm.
gun, there's no shrugging, especially from
Right.
the ATF's point of view. Well, we were
Yep.
also going to talk about a few other items. I wanted to clarify an alert went out last week about the ATF wanting to regulate the storage of explosives and so forth. And Jared with Guns and Gadgets was kind of making it sound like this could apply to smokeless powder, like all of us have in our self-defense cartridges, and therefore the government would have some new requirements so we couldn't have very much ammo stored and all that. Well, it turns out that that wasn't the case, that they were merely adding, this is already existing regulations. They were just adding some changes to storage and reporting of this stuff, but none of it dealt with modern smokeless ammo. It dealt with explosives, and the only thing that one of us might have that would fall into the category of explosives that way, unless you're a farmer that has dynamite or something, um, would be black powder. Those of you that are black powder shooters, black powder falls that is considered an explosive, unlike gunpowder or modern gunpowder, smokeless powder, which is a propellant. The propellants just burn really fast, super fast, and generate tons of smoke and gases, pressure to propel a bullet out, whereas opposed to something that's actually exploding, which apparently black powder under the right conditions can literally do the explosion with the shock wave and all that stuff, where you don't get a shock wave and things from a propellant. So I just wanted to clarify. So there's nothing there much unless you have lots of black powder and you somehow fall under this that's of interest. The
Now,
other thing that
does
go
that
ahead.
apply also to the black powder substitutes? Because most of what you buy in the store today for black powder for muzzle loading firearms is actually a substitute. It's not the true black powder.
And does that also, and that doesn't create the problem with rust and so forth, or does it? Do you still have to clean? Do you use the modern black powder, modern powder?
I'm not that versed on the black powder stuff. That's
Yeah,
why
I'm
I was
not either. I'm
asking.
curious if
So,
they, maybe, I'm sure some of our members out there are. If anybody knows something in the chat about this. Number one, is the new black powder substitute an explosive? And number two, is it corrosive? Yeah, we'll keep our eye open, see if somebody pops up with
yeah.
some information on that. Yeah, and so I got Alice was going to talk about me having to try crow. Every now and then, you get surprised. In fact, it happens a lot with guns. Um, and I truly, when that website, the gunfacts.info website said that a 458 Winchester Magnum, a gun with 5,000, a cartridge with 5,000 foot-pounds of energy generated, an elephant gun that you can take down elephants and virtually any animal on the face of the earth, um, was something that could be shot out of a handgun. I just scoffed at that because I just couldn't picture that being practical, and it probably isn't all that practical. But indeed, one of our alert readers said, "Yep, here's a video showing a revolver in 458 Winchester Magnum." I did some searching, and I thought about it, and I thought, if anybody was to do that, it would be Thompson Contender. And sure enough, they had a bunch of what we normally consider rifle cartridges that you could actually shoot out of a handgun if you were a masochist. All right, so here we go. Sailor Tom. Yes, it is still as dirty and corrosive as true black powder. Then my question, Sailor Tom, is what's the advantage of that versus true black powder?
Um,
Yeah, Tom's a contender to the rescue.
I think it is not true black powder. It's classified as smokeless powder, and you don't have to get the same permits that you do
But it's still dirty
for.
and still corrosive. Is that what
Yes,
he's saying?
right.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it is still contains the sulfur and is corrosive, but it's less dense and
Not sensitive,
uh,
he said. He says it's
not,
not
yeah,
sensitive.
it's not as volatile.
Yeah. Oh, I was picturing a different kind of sensitive. The gunpowder gets its feelings hurt. No, never mind. Okay, so
No, we're not talking snowflakes here.
yeah, we're talking black powder, not white snowflakes. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, then there was another item I wanted to talk about too, which is it just amazes me how desperate and what extents our gun control fanatics will go to. And they literally, I thought they would avoid this, but they didn't avoid it. They went right to it. They basically said, well, if we're looking at our history and traditions in America to justify that saying some people can't carry a gun, well, that's what we did with black slaves and freed black men. So we were totally racist. And because of that, and then because of that history, now we should keep up with it. Why should we stop now with racism? Let's keep going. Let's ban minorities from carrying or whoever. Or it's amazing they actually went there. And this wasn't just some politician. This was the Attorney General of California to the courts
Yeah.
trying to justify their gun bans on people by saying, well, we did it for slavery. I
People look
mean,
at me like I'm crazy when I say that gun control is racist and has racist roots. And I mean, it's to keep undesirables from being able to protect themselves, basically. Um,
yeah,
it's also assuming that if you're one of those people, that you mean to do harm with that tool that I or someone else would use for good. So it's a racist law when they pass gun control.
Yeah,
and
and
it was born out of racism, and today's gun control is still predicated out of racism.
yeah, and again, and the same Attorney General Pat said, well, we can't have people running out guns like that, open carrying guns and stuff, unless it's dangerous unless they're with the government.
Hmm. Right. So
So
if you're with
you
the government, does that make you special?
Yeah, you're just some Joe Blow that decides he wants to work for the government. He could work at
Mhm.
somewhere else like Apple Computer or something. Oh no, I want to work for the government. Oh, okay. So you get your paycheck from the government. Now magically, now the world is safe if you carry that gun openly. But had you worked for Apple and carried a gun openly, oh my God, we couldn't have allowed that. It's just mind-boggling.
It is. It is.
Talking
And
about Maj
so,
Toure.
yeah, he must have got it from me that that gun control is racist, right? Um,
Right.
so yeah, and gun laws do propagate crime. With gun-free zones become magnets for evil people wanting to do evil things. So um, I was going to say something else, and I lost my train of thought.
Crime pays in politics. Well, I guess it does.
Yeah, yeah, it does. But anyway, so oh, I know what I was going to say. It's talking about government employees, and if you look at statistics, permit holders are more law abiding statistically. They have a lower arrest and conviction record than police officers.
Yeah,
And
well,
yet
especially for violent crime.
and yet the government gives police officers guns but wants to take away the ability to carry of permit holders. So
And I see
let's
Clayton
see.
Vegas. Yeah, Clayton Vegas stepped in here as one of our regular members up in Northern Virginia. Pyrodic's advantage over the true black powder is that regarding interstate transportation regulations, it is subject to less restrictive rules for smokeless powder.
Yeah,
So,
it's treated like
therefore, it's
smokeless
going to be
powder.
cheaper, probably be cheaper to get and less restrictive. So,
Hmm.
yeah, that makes sense. All right. Um, Then we had also had an item about universal background checks affecting making it dangerous for somebody that may be going through a mental health crisis where they might be considering suicide. Now in Virginia, this doesn't apply to us, but if they were to tweak the laws in a negative way, it could. I mean, a concept that's come up lately is that one way to help a gun owner in crisis, if the gun owner knows he's in crisis, he could give his gun, just say, look, I'm going through a horrible time right now. I don't want to be around guns because I'm just so down. And you realize you're down, and so therefore you take your guns and give them to your best friend and say, "Could you hold these for me? By the way, hold these pills or anything else you might have that you might consider a danger at that time." And right now you can do that, and you could always do that in Virginia. So far, we haven't screwed that up. I'm sure if the gun controllers get control again, they'll find a way to goof this up. But in many, many states that have universal background checks, this becomes a nightmare. You can't just give your guns to a friend. Your friend and you have to go to a gun dealer and transfer all those guns with 4473s and background checks. And then to get your guns back when it's all over, and fees, by the way, too, all the fees associated. You got to reverse that. You've got to go through the background check. You've got to pay your fees again. You got to do the 4473s to get your guns back. That's not something you really want to put somebody in crisis through. If they're smart enough to know that for their current condition, they want to temporarily get rid of those guns, they don't want to give them to the government. They want to give it to somebody they know, and they know they can get them back once everything is straightened out and their life is back on the right track. So anyhow, that's something we should always be on the lookout for. It's another example of gun control taking more lives than it would ever save. Yeah, Dan Liberty. Yeah, we mentioned this before in an alert a couple of years ago. The Hold My Guns organization. At the time, there wasn't much to partner with. They didn't have much going on in Virginia. I'll have to go look at them again to see if anything's been updated. I think they started in Washington State, if I'm not mistaken, or Idaho, somewhere up in that area. And I think it's been spreading. And well, Pat, that's an issue too. I think that's probably a federal issue. Um, if you said, "Okay, I'll be glad to hold the guns of anybody that needs them held for this purpose," wouldn't you, because you're an FFL, you don't have a choice, do you? Wouldn't you have to take those guns and put them on your books?
So
Can
if
you
I
just
hold them as an individual, no. But if I
okay?
hold them as an FFL, I do. If they spend the night in my shop, they have to go on my book.
Okay, so they have
And
to drop them off at your house or something, or whatever.
right.
Or
And if they're not there for cleaning or repair or something like that, then when the person comes to pick them up, they have to go through a background check to get their own gun back.
right, yeah. I mean, it's
So, so if somebody is in a situation, I mean, you shouldn't be penalized for seeking treatment for a medical condition. And this is something that VCDL has been contemplating what is a good solution for, because there are people out there that value their rights, Second Amendment rights included, and they don't seek treatment for certain things because they don't want to take the chance of losing their rights. And you
right.
should never, ever, ever be penalized for seeking treatment, seeking help, and trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, but boy, they sure
So,
try. We batted something like that down years ago, where yeah, they were going to say, well, if you sought treatment, then we're going to, you can't get a concealed carry permit for 5 years.
right.
And I stood up in committee and said, so what this bill will do is it will discourage anybody from getting any help. If they're a governor,
Hmm.
they're just going to suffer through it and pay whatever consequences they are. Is that what you really want to do? And the committee agreed with that, and then they killed it. But the point was they tried that in Virginia to actually say that I was there. I see here's a comment, Silvermine 203, here for support, CCDL. Yeah, the Connecticut Citizens Defense League. Tell Holly Sullivan, your president, hello for me. Might be seeing her pretty soon at the Gun Rights Policy Conference.
Yep. And Rights Are Not Tradition says New Mexico is a perfect example of exactly what I knew they were doing when they all started beating the drum with the mental health thing. They just declare a public health crisis. And our beloved senator, and I use that term extremely loosely, Tim Kaine, is talking about a mental health bill now. So we have to watch that very, very carefully, because that he could easily slip backdoor gun control in on that one. And it's an issue that needs to be addressed, and it needs attention, but it needs it in the right way. So the other thing to remember here, yes, people that commit mass murders are definitely not normal mentally. They are disturbed people. But mental illness, people that suffer from mental illness, and there's all kinds of mental illness, are no more or less likely to commit a violent crime than people that are not mentally ill. So we have to be very careful not to have a biased, a prejudice against people simply because of a medical condition.
Right. In fact, I think statistically, those with the mental health issues like that are statistically a much better chance of being a victim than they are ever being the aggressor.
Right.
Um, but yet they're all treated. They could be treated like they're aggressors. So it's a very complicated thing. It's the gun control crowd doesn't care. For them, it's just another reason to take guns. So
Yep. So Bandit 848 says it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Create an environment where people are unwilling to get help, and when they fail, it goes into statistics and aids the argument. And Dan Liberty, yes, I do mean Tiny Tim. Um, I call him the devil incarnate, but that's just me. So and there's a lot of Warsaw Patriot says there's a lot of this language stuff that they sneak in and very disturbing, just like the language in the legislation of other states have passed. Um, and yes, we have to read the bills. We have to look for those unintended consequences. They're out there all over the place.
Yeah, a lot of times they slip through the General Assembly. They may not mean for bad things to happen, but that's what we've got to be watching out for it. Because we, especially people like us that are really into gun rights, we know what we're looking for there. A lot of these legislators, some of them literally don't know what end of the gun the bullet comes out of or where it comes out of it, and yet they're voting on this stuff. So we have to be very careful.
Yeah, and I talked to a woman several years ago, and she was looking at the guns, and this was when the gun store was in the convenience store, a true ATF store, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, all in one location, gas, bait, all sorts of things. Um, but she had several years prior she had a mental breakdown when her father passed away suddenly, and her father were very close. And so at the time, she tried to commit suicide and she was hospitalized. Well, she didn't, it never really occurred to her, but several years later, she tried to buy a gun because now she's on her own, living alone, and knew she was responsible for her own safety. And when you live out in the boonies, it can take 10, 15 minutes for the police to show up if you dial 911. So she went to buy a gun, and they arrested her for lying on the form because she had been hospitalized for trying to commit suicide. And it cost her thousands and thousands of dollars to not go to jail for that. So, that it was a temporary situation. She recuperated from it. She was mentally well and stable years later, goes to buy a gun and had this happen to her um, unfairly. So,
Yeah, honestly, I think in a situation like that, where they really, it looks to be an inadvertent thing, they ought to have a two strike system. Like, okay, we're warning you, don't do this again till you get your mental health cleared, and then just let her go. And if she does it
mm,
again, now she knew, and she's clearly trying to violate the law because this happens to a lot of people. Again, there's this whole Lautenberg Amendment, this whole misdemeanor domestic violence, same thing. Somebody forgot that 30 years ago they pled guilty to throwing a pillow at their wife, and they go to buy a gun, and now they're off to jail. I think in those kind of situations, they probably should have a one strike. You just give them one shot at it. They come back again, at least then you know. Otherwise, somebody just doesn't know. I mean, I can understand how you wouldn't know. I mean, the law changed over the years, and it affected you in retrospect. That's really not fair.
So Dan is asking if he were to accept a private transfer to hold guns for a friend, wouldn't I have to go through a background check for each firearm here in Virginia?
No,
So
no. Go
it's
ahead.
well, it's complicated, a little more complicated than that. If you both live in the same state, if you both live in
Yeah.
Virginia, and they give you the guns and nothing of value changes hands in exchange for the guns, then no background check is required. If they live in a different state and they give you the guns, then it does have to go through an FFL and through a background check, and that's a federal law, and that applies whether it's holding the guns temporarily um, or the person giving them to you. But you can go through one background check for all the guns if it's all done at the same time, and they would all have to be listed on the 4473.
Yeah, and so yeah, you would yeah. So that's a really good point. Yeah, as long as you're in Virginia, it's fairly easily done because as long as Pat said, if you're not getting any money or anything. Now, I think actually the person could give money to the person that he's giving the guns to. I would think that would work because like saying, okay, here's $100 to hold my guns because usually you don't give money to the person that you're selling something to. That's the whole
Right.
point, is you're getting money from them. In this case, you're clearly not selling the guns. In fact, not only are you not getting anything back, you're giving them money to cover their costs or their time or whatever in those guns. But they can give you nothing in return because it cannot, in any way, shape, or form, to appear to be a sale. But a gift, a transfer, you're okay. Don't have to be a family member, nothing like that. So the other thing I had on the list was that Biden's coming under a lot of pressure over his attempt to take away funding from from schools who have hunting and archery classes, or part of the curricula involves hunting or archery, and he's come under tremendous pressure for that. Those are, again, that's as American gets, and it's again, sometimes when the hunters wake up, if we get the hunters to stay awake, we can get a lot more people in the fight with us. We can get things done. I think it was probably largely hunters and other gun owners stepping up, but there was clearly enough of an uproar that made Biden stop halfway through a step and decide that maybe he wants to change directions. I'm telling you, that kind of pressure works, but you just have to do it. People get together and call in numbers. It doesn't take too many before you'll get the attention of your politicians.
Yep. So, Rights Are Not a Tradition says that the feds were working with the VA, the Veterans Administration, VA, not Virginia, trying to ban any vets with PTSD from owning guns. And McCarthy had an opportunity to protect them in his state, but shot down the bill. So, yeah, we have to watch all of that stuff. There's so many backdoor ways that they try to disarm, and they use the
Well,
language against us. We were talking about this last month, that they use the scary terms and call us scary names and radicals, and use terms like ghost guns and assault rifles and gun show loopholes and all of these made up terms to confuse the uneducated public. And there are so many people out there that haven't got a clue. And even gun owners. I had a woman come into my store who wanted a 22 rifle that she owned. She wanted us to look at it, but she didn't think that people should have ARs because they're only to kill people. And it was things, she
she,
absolutely parroted things that the news says.
she drank the Kool-Aid.
She did. She was drowning in Kool-Aid. But us as gun owners, a lot of times we are hesitant to talk to other people about guns and gun rights because we're afraid that we'll be stigmatized. But the only way to not have that prejudice prevalent in society is to be right out there in the open and talk to the general public, talk to
You
the
got to clear up
people.
clear
Yeah,
up the misrepresentations. Don't let them walk away thinking
right.
that what she said was true. Point out what's wrong about that. Yeah, we banned it for 848 was asking about New Mexico. Yeah, we discussed it ad nauseum early on. That was like the first topic we hit today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so go back and watch the beginning of it. Listen to the beginning of it on your way to work tomorrow. I know we typically run long, and people a lot of times can't stay for the whole thing. But if you missed it, came in late or whatever, or had to leave early, just listen to it on your way to work. It makes your commute go a little bit faster. Let's see.
Yeah, and yeah, Dan Liberty pointed out his parents met at the rifle club in the high school in the 40s. Well, they had rifle
Mhm.
clubs into the 60s and in some places into the 70s and so forth. It was the 80s when things really started collapsing, and that's also about the time school shootings started showing up.
Yep. So Warsaw Patriot says if you want to look at one of the first bad examples of gun control that backfired on their own people, look no further than 1928 Nuremberg. Laws that forced all German Jews in Germany to register guns. And he goes on to say violation of Goodwin's Law, Fifth Amendment, and I'm not sure what you mean by the ENT violations there, but yeah, so we've seen time and time again, Germany was just one example of governments outlawing guns and then stomping on the people, genocide. Governments kill more people than private citizens ad nauseum. And if you don't believe me, start looking it up. I'm
Yeah,
just
big
fact check
millions and
me.
millions.
Please
Yeah.
fact check me. Yeah. So let's see.
Yeah, Sean Kennedy says he
Oh,
wants to
yeah.
tell everybody about the Chantilly gun show and the new coordinator.
Yeah. I'm really excited. We have a brand new team in Chantilly. What are we? 6 people. So Chantilly has like 8 shows a year. That's almost one a month. And that's a lot of work. So we have a team that's going to share the load up there. I'm really excited about them. Their first show will be this month, towards the end of the month. So yeah, watch the VA alert. You can get the details on vcdl.org/events, plural. It's on there. It's also, if you scroll down on our homepage, you'll see it there. But welcome to our new Chantilly team.
Yeah, and
And
Sean Kennedy's sort of at the head of that team.
yeah, and
And
thanks
yeah,
thanks to Danny and Deborah for their service as well. Danny put in 15 years, and Deborah put in the last several years as his co-coordinator, assistant coordinator. So that is an awful lot of work, but it's so important. We reach a lot of people.
yep.
Let's see.
And Dan and Sean, be sure and give me the alert item when you're ready to call for volunteers. If there's any more you need.
So David Lee Clark is asking, can a declared emergency override constitutional rights?
Well, in Virginia, VCDL got a bill put in some years ago that prohibits the governor from banning guns under a state of emergency.
And
We
you
did
know,
that right after Katrina. We saw what happened in Louisiana when Katrina hit, and people's guns being confiscated. That next year, when the General Assembly met, we said we got to make sure that doesn't happen in Virginia.
yeah,
What
and
do you think, Pat?
so one thing that we have to remember is that rights are not granted by government. Rights are inherent. We are born with them, and if you're alive, you've got rights. The Bill of Rights in the Constitution was put there to charge the federal government with protecting those 10 very important rights. And it was put there to limit the government from infringing on those rights. So
As
you
the
don't
founding
get
fathers
your
felt
rights
they
from the
would.
government, right?
No, no.
And people
All
have
the Bill of
rights,
Rights says is government, keep your hands off that list. This list of 10 things, keep your hands off.
right?
Don't touch them.
And by the way, the government doesn't have any rights. They have
They
responsibilities
have
and they have
powers.
permissions and they have powers, but they do not have rights. Only people have rights. So when somebody says to you the Second Amendment is a collective right and it means that the government can have guns, say, no, the government can't have rights. And all the other rights apply to the people. This one does too. And the Bruin case actually said that the Second Amendment was not a second class right.
Right.
It was
And that
it
you
was
didn't
a
have to be part of a militia
right.
to have it. So they laid it all out. And the gun control crowd has got their hair on fire in the meantime.
So Warsaw Patriot said something about they'd like to address your people. You can email president at vcdl.org with that. And I'm not sure what you mean by sub to National Association of Gun Rights.
I don't know. You can always contact me. Yeah, she gave you the
Right,
contact information. That might be easier that way.
right. Yeah, in the chats it can get a little bit mixed up. So it's better if you have a direct question like that, just email president at vcdl.org.
So Thursday we have our in-person meeting up at the gun range up in Northern Virginia, and
Yes.
uh, that point I'm gonna talk about. We'll be discussing our legislative agenda coming January. So if you're in the area, you might want to come up and hear us. I'll lay out all the things that we're planning on doing, and eventually that stuff will make its way to VA alert.
Yep. So we're having it normally the meeting up at XCal is on the third Thursday of the month. But Philip is one of the speakers at the Gun Rights Policy Conference this year. So he'll be traveling to Phoenix. And so XCal was gracious enough to allow us to move the meeting to the second Thursday of the month, which is this coming Thursday. So if you're up in that part of the state, we hope to see you. And if you want to have a meeting in your part of the state, you can email president at vcdl.org. Find a place where we can have a meeting, a place that allows people to carry. And we'll get together, set up a date and a time, and have meetings in other places.
Yep. And also, Pat's now ordered. You got how many switchblades have come in that you
The
got
first,
headed to the printer?
yeah, the first 38 came in. SOG had to order more scales, so they are on order and should be in. I didn't get an ETA on the scales, but I got the sense that it wasn't going to take too terribly long. But we already have 110 orders for the switchblades as of, I think that was Saturday morning that I looked. I haven't checked lately. So, yeah, if you want to order a switchblade, it says out of stock on the website because they're not here yet, but it is a pre-order. It will let you back order the item. So you can go online and let me see. I think do.
Yeah. Well, she's looking. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I've got mine now.
Yeah.
Came in. Yeah, it doesn't show very well, but it's a nice little job. Just barely short of 3 inches, and that's important because that allows you then to carry this at schools and at the General Assembly. And it's a good length for just a general knife to carry around with you. I'll tell you what though, the clip on that thing, boy, that thing really hangs on your pants tight. They put a hell of a clip on it. No way that's going to slip out of your pocket. Again, I like the fact that it locks with the same switch that you open it with. So you don't have to unlock it and then hit a different switch to open. It's all done with one motion. Kind of like the safeties on some guns, where when you pull the trigger, they automatically disable the safeties that were in place. Similar concept.
Let me see. All right, so that's a picture of the pocket knife. Actually, that is not the best picture of the knife, but that's the one I've got at the moment. And I will put a link in the comments on where to go to order it. Um, I've been happy with the knife. It's really, really sharp.
Yeah, yeah. It fits your hand. It's a nice little handy knife,
Yeah.
including how it's got a cutout for your finger to get behind that protects you from your finger accidentally going forward, going across the blade. So it just grips really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very comfortable. It's slim and
Yeah.
lightweight. The scales are aluminum, and the blade is a good quality blade. And it's less than 3 inches, so it's legal to carry on school grounds and in the General Assembly building.
And
So,
then pretty much everywhere else too, except
mhm.
maybe on federal property or something. Honestly, I'm going to have to get caught up more on some of the more obscure knife laws. We're planning on doing stuff with knives next year too.
Mhm.
Husky
Yeah.
Mom's asking about raffle tickets. I'm glad she brought that up. Go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, bless their hearts. So, I called on Thursday or Friday to ask about the raffle tickets because they cashed our check almost a month ago.
We're talking
So I
about
know,
the state now. The state.
yeah, the state, you have to buy a permit to hold a raffle if you intend to make more than $40,000 in a calendar year. So we filled out the permit application and sent it into the state, and we're expecting to hear back in a week or two with a response. And didn't hear. So I called him up, and he said, "Oh, yeah, well, we have 45 days to respond to these permit applications. And so I usually don't even look at them for about 30 days. And your 30 days is next week. So I'll get to it then. But let me glance at this real quick and see if I need anything else." So he looks at the application and he says, "Well, I see you want to have the drawing on November 16th. And so you're in kind of a hurry here. So there'll be 30 days next week. So I'll start looking at it then." And I'm like,
Okay.
you don't want to know the words that I said after I hung up the phone. Let's put it that way. So, anyway, as soon as we get the permit number from the state, then we have to take the permit number and have it printed on the ticket, because legally it has to be printed on the ticket. And it takes about a week for the printer to do all of the printing, numbering, cutting, stapling, and everything that they have to do. So it's going to be a couple weeks yet anyway.
Yeah. Well,
So,
once we've got this down, then future raffles should hopefully will go easier. I think this is the first one. You got a learning
mhm,
curve. You got to get the original application in. From then on, we sort of amend the application and so forth. And
right.
asking you shall receive. There's all we have people out there. No matter what you say, you're going to have people that know the answer.
Mhm,
Jason King said federal property, the knife blade has to be under 2 inches. So they're allowing you to have a penknife,
mhm.
basically.
Nail clippers, but you can't take those on an airplane.
No, you can't take this except in
Yeah.
the checked baggage on an airplane.
Yep. Yep, the government has excelled in creating red tape, which is why they should handle our health care, right?
Yes, yes. And everything else that we need to have done efficiently.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's not just our government; they're all ours. May be one of the better ones when it comes to this stuff, but there's some
Well,
things that are better left to the private sector,
absolutely.
or
And
that don't need regulation to begin with. You know.
in my opinion, the function of government should be the only function of government should be to protect the rights of the individual. Period. End of story. That's all we need government for, is to protect the rights of the individual.
Well, it's handy to have a common currency within the country, for example, and stuff. But yeah,
Hmm.
they're very restrictive. Well, that's how the founding fathers envisioned it. Very restrictive. They
Hmm.
did not envision the monstrosity we've got north of Richmond,
Right.
as the song says. They
Right.
didn't. They didn't. But they kind of knew government would get there. But that's not what they had in mind. They had in mind a very small government that held the states together and provided some national security and a common currency and did stuff like that. They never envisioned something like BATF or the secrets or the IRS or any of that
Right.
stuff. Did,
Yeah.
didn't
So,
didn't picture that
government should
in the
fit in the
box it came.
box that it came in.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
that box has been smashed a long
Oh
time ago.
man.
That cat is not going back in that bag. So, I truly wish that government came fit in the box that it came in, but
Oh, that would be
we're
wonderful.
way past that. Yeah,
Oh man.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
we are at 9:25,
yeah, it's time to
and
go.
so I think it's time that we bid you all adieu. And if you enjoyed tonight, we had quite a few people on here tonight. So share this with your friends and suggest that they listen to it. And if you're up in Northern Virginia, we will see you hopefully
Thursday.
at the Thursday night meeting. Otherwise, we will see you on the second Sunday of the month in October. Have a
Yep.
good night, folks.
Okay. Good night.